Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishnah Yomi, Masechet Ketubot. We are up to Perek Ched Mishnah Zayin. Today's Mishnah should be Leilu Nishmad Neria ben Svetlana, Ranbai Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelo ben Chana bad Miriam, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, Eleavde ben Chaim Lechaim v'Refuah Shenemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betoch Shah Chulei Israel. In a regular non-Yibum marriage, all the husband's property is pledged to pay his wife's ketubah. Ketubah here includes the standard 100 to 200 zuz, and the extra amount the husband added, and the value of the tzon barzel property. When she comes to collect her ketubah, he must give her his last remaining property if necessary. This is not so in the case of a Yibum marriage. If a man performs Yibum with his brother's wife and then dies or divorces her, she can collect her ketubah only from the property that he inherited from his brother, as we learned in Yevamot chapter 4, Mishnah 7. When one performs Yibum, he inherits all of his deceased brother's property. So if he lost or sold the inheritance, she might be unable to collect her ketubah. If he sold land that he inherited, she could go to court and request that the land be seized from the buyers. However, this option is undesirable because it takes time and effort. So to prevent this, the rabbis decreed that a Yavam may not sell or deplete any of the property inherited from his brother. Rather, he must preserve it so that it will be available for his wife's ketubah. And the Mishnah teaches how this should be done. If his brother left him money, land should be bought with it and kept for a ketubah payment, and he eats the produce of the land. In this way, the value of the inherited money is preserved, and the Yavam still benefits from it. If his brother left produce that is detached from the ground, land should be bought with it and kept for a ketubah payment, and he eats the produce of the land. If his brother left produce that is still attached to the ground, Rabbi Meir said, we evaluate them, meaning we evaluate the fields in which the produce is growing and see how much they are worth with the produce and how much they are worth without the produce. And with the value of the difference, which is the value of the produce, land should be bought and kept for a ketubah payment, and he eats the produce of the land. Now these laws all follow the view of Rabbi Meir, even though Rabbi Meir's name is mentioned only in connection with the second ruling, which concerns attached produce. The previous rulings, which talk about money and detached produce, also follow his view. So he holds that any type of property, even movable objects such as money and detached produce that is inherited from the deceased husband, must be set aside for the ketubah. The sages, however, disagree. In their view, the ketubah is collectible only from the deceased husband's land. Therefore, only his land needs to be preserved for the ketubah, whereas money and movable objects belong completely to the avam and may do with them whatever he wants. But the sages say, perot mechubarim bakalka shelo. The Mishnah here explains that according to the sages, if his brother left produce that is attached to the ground, it is his. However, the commentaries explain, the Rav explains based on the Gemara in Masechet Ketubot, page 82a, that the text has to be changed. Produce attached to the ground has the same status of land as land, which is pledged to the ketubah, even according to the sages. Everyone agrees, therefore, that it must be preserved, meaning used to buy land for a ketubah. So for this reason, the Gemara changes the text of the Mishnah to read, Perot mechubarim bakalka shelah. If his brother left produce that is attached to the ground, it is hers, meaning the produce belongs to her, that it is pledged to her ketubah and must be kept for that purpose. If he left produce that was detached from the ground, whoever is first acquires it, which means the following: Kadamu zachav, the avam is first, he acquires it and may do with it as he wishes, because detached produce is a movable item, which the sages hold is not pledged to the ketubah. But if she was first, meaning she took the detached produce from her first husband in his lifetime as collateral for a ketubah, she acquires it in the sense that it becomes mortgaged to her ketubah. Therefore, land should be bought with it and kept for a ketubah, and he, the avam, eats its produce. Although the sages hold that a husband's movable objects such as detached produce are not pledged for the payment of his wife's ketubah, the sages agree that if the wife sees them as collateral during his lifetime, she can collect her ketubah from them. And the Rav does tell us, the Halakha follows the opinion of the sages. The Mishnah states a general rule about a Yavam and Yevama. Once he marries her by performing Yibum, she is like his wife in every respect. Now this statement teaches us 2 points that Rav explains. A, if he wishes to divorce her, he only has to give her a regular get. Chalitza is not necessary. And B, if he divorces her and then wants to remarry her, he may do so. Although the Torah prohibits one to marry his sister-in-law except to fulfill the mitzvah of Yibum, once he has taken her in Yibum, she is like any other wife, even to the extent that he may take her back after divorce. Except that the security for Ketubah rests only on the property of her first husband and not on the property of the Yavam. Like we explained, only the property inherited by the Yavam from the late husband is pledged to Ketubah. So again, the general about the Yavam and Yavam is once he marries her by performing Yibum, she is like his wife in every respect, except that the security for Ketubah rests only on the property of the first husband and not on the property of the Yavam. That is the Rabotai of Mishna Zayin. Mishnah Chet continues with another law concerning the Ketubah that Yavam must pay his wife. Lo yomar la harei ketubatich munachat al shulchan. He may not say to her while they are still married, the money for your ketubah is lying on the table, meaning he cannot limit the property for a ketubah to money that he sets aside. Ela kol nechasav acharei nechtubata. Rather, all of his brother's properties are pledged to her ketubah. And a similar rule applies to every woman's ketubah. V'chen lo yomar adam liishto ketubatich munachat al shulchan. Similarly, a man may not say to his wife, the money for your ketubah is lying on the table. Rather, all his properties are pledged to her ketubah. Neither a yavam nor an ordinary husband is allowed to designate specific property for his wife's ketubah because that would cause resentment. She would feel that he hates her and wants to divorce her. The Mishnah returns to the ketubah that yavam must pay. If he divorced her after performing Yibum, she has the right to collect only her ketubah, and he may sell any of his late brother's remaining properties. This law is obvious. The Mishnah states it only to teach by way of implication that before he divorces her, he is forbidden to sell any of his brother's properties. If he remarried her before paying her ketubah, she is like all other women who, if they get divorced and then remarry the same man, are entitled only to the original ketubah, and therefore she too is entitled only to her original ketubah, meaning she may collect only from the property her husband inherited from his brother. Now in chapter 9, Mishnah 9, it teaches that if a man divorces his wife and then remarries her before paying a ketubah, he takes her back on the assumption that the original ketubah will suffice for the second marriage as well. Our Mishnah teaches the same law applies when a Yavam divorces and remarries his Yavama. He does not need to provide her with a new ketubah, rather the previous ketubah to which only the property of her late husband was pledged remains in effect. And that is an Abotai of today's Mishnah Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.